Appreciate you hopping on today. We've had multiple. I've been calling it sportainment or social entertainment, or there's a bunch of different names now. We've had a bunch of different guests on, but super excited for this one. More we somehow, even though golf has been the most popular, I don't think we've had a golf side one. So here we are. We're about to do it post Thanksgiving. Make it happen.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. So Jared, I want to start here, and we were talking about this before, and a lot of what ProFluence we try to do is not focus too much on the past and the founding story and everything. The future, where it is today, is what we like to keep it to. So as you look at the space as a whole, and we'll start to touch on 5 iron here in a little bit, but what does it look like? There's a bunch of new players and entrants and concepts and sports and money flowing in. How do you see the space of, I'm just going to keep calling it sportainment today, and where it's currently at?
It's a great question. It's something that I think about all the time. Our sort of motto here is community, not commodity, I guess. So starting there with how do we actually build community and a long-term relationship with our customers instead of just getting commoditized? My best example of sort of getting commoditized, I was over in Dubai for the 5 iron opening there, which is really cool. But you see what happened with Padel there, where everyone put up a ton of Padel courts, but no real differentiators. And then all of a sudden you just kind of, all right, is it $10? Is it $15? What's the lowest price you can get on a court for Padel? And I worry that there has been this rush to put in money and just like build these things, whether it's Padel, pickleball, mini golf, indoor simulators, and there's no real thought around what's the actual differentiator between your concept and another. So I think that low interest rates, the past, private equity pouring tons of money into it. Now sort of the future is going to be who can actually make a difference in the space. And one thing that I hear all the time is like, well, there's a simulator company and there's another simulator company. You would never say that about a restaurant. Per se, here in New York, a 3 Michelin-starred restaurant is very different than McDonald's, right? So obviously there are industries that have figured out a way to build that community or at least differentiate the value proposition. So it's sort of, at least for us, thinking about how we can do that.
And when you think about, you mentioned the private equity side for funding these concepts, and obviously you guys, I'm sure, raised money. What does that look like, right? It's not traditional venture capital VC often. It's not your standard private equity. It's built up. Let's just improve it. What does that look like on the capital raising side? Because these concepts sit in a unique space between real estate and between entertainment and between sports and early stage concepts and later stage more built out. What does that look like?
I think that at least for us, what it looked like, we were already open. My wife and I invested our capital to open 5 iron. We didn't know about private equity, investment banks. We didn't know about really any of this world. EBITDA, adjusted EBITDA, all of these concepts were a bit foreign to us when we opened 5 iron, which meant the only concept that matters was, do we have enough money in the bank to actually operate the business and not go out of business? But what happened was private equity will find you and they start seeing you. They're following everything from Google reviews to God only knows what systems that they have on the back end to find out, LinkedIn, how many employees have you hired and things like that. So they find you. We have 2 great private equity partners, so I have nothing to complain about there. But what I will say about private equity, in some ways, they're followers, which in a way has been a good thing for this competitive entertainment, whatever category you want to call, where we all fall into. The bad news is that once it kind of dries up and goes cold, they're on to the next thing, right? So I think that our entire world was doing really well with tons of money flowing in and high valuations and whatnot. But at the end of it, it's sort of like, well, what's become of it? Are any of these concepts actually successful and can they last for the long haul?
Why golf too? What was that? Just passion or?
Yeah. So I was in New York City for law school with my wife, Catering, at Columbia. And her best job opportunity after Columbia was clerking for a judge in Rochester in upstate New York. And I actually went to work on Wall Street. And this is before you could work from home forever and ever. So I was 2 years in the city by myself, and I started picking up golf on a simulator in the back of a men's clothing store with this guy, Mike Doyle. But the other interesting piece of it, I was playing a lot of ping pong in a place called Spin, which was really one of the first entertainment concepts here in New York. And I loved the graffiti and the street art, and I started to see these team building and entertainment. And they were kind of the only player in town, as crazy as it sounds, back 10 years ago. And now you look to today, there's darts and pickleball and electric shuffle and shuffleboard this and a million other sort of knockoffs of those sort of main concepts. So, but that was really the first time you saw anything like that in New York City, at least for me. And that was sort of what the idea was built out of.
And golf, what's interesting is one of the few sports that you can, eat, drink, do whatever while still playing. Do you think some of the other concepts will struggle because it's not, we're seeing baseball and basketball, some of these more physically active sports as well. What's sort of the thoughts on that concept, having done this for a good bit of time in a pretty sweet, we've seen it can work in golf. We're not really sure if it can work in a lot of these other ones.
Right. I'm not even sure it can work in golf. I mean, you look at everything from Topgolf struggles, which are public, and some of the indoor miniature golf concepts, and I know our numbers. Like, I'm not sure it's so obvious that it can work, but I do think that golf's advantage is that it's not a sort of go out at night only type sport, right? You have people at 5-iron that are practicing, taking lessons, club fitting, bag storage, right? You really have a membership type feel in a sport that's accustomed to a membership type feel. So we can, and this is really how we actually started talking on LinkedIn, was monetizing the actual day. So you have a company like 5-iron that, maybe this is top secret, but like our event revenue might be 25% of our entire revenue of the business. You look at some of these other concepts and they're 75, 80% just in events. So your entire business is a corporate event business, which in the best version of that is really, really good. There's a lot of margin on corporate events and whatnot, but with all of these competitors coming in and they're all trying to take the exact same corporate event customer, and at least for us, just to rely on that so heavily is something that we've always tried to avoid. And that's, I would like to say, if you're listening, please do your corporate events at 5-iron. I think we do them better than anyone else. But in terms of it being the only thing, that's not something that we ever wanted 5-iron to be.
Yeah. And when you say better than anyone else, just give us the rundown on, I don't
Yeah,
want to say the pitch, but like why you believe yours is better than anyone else's.
sure. I think it starts with the initial inbound. We have rules like you have to respond within 10 minutes to an initial inbound. The way I see it, if you, Andrew, are reaching out to do a corporate event, you have 5 other companies you're reaching out to. And I also, as someone who's booked events, want to book it at the place that the person responds quickly, because I'm going to have questions about the DJ and the food and changing the number of guests. So we are obsessive about sort of our response time there. And then taking it all the way to the end, we're obsessive about our metricing and surveys at the end to make sure that we're actually improving the events on the end. But then in the middle there, you have building world-class designs and having in the right space, the right sound system, the right projector so that the companies can project their whatever presentation that they have to do. And really at the heart of it all is just hospitality, which is something that we are obsessed with at 5-iron. And certainly if you're listening like, I had a terrible experience at 5-iron, it's certainly possible. It happens all the time, but we really are obsessed about that hospitality. One of our investors actually is Danny Meyer, who wrote the book Setting the Table, and is a book that I've read 1,000 times at this point, and it's something that we really care about. Yeah,
that is a good book. Yeah, that's cool. Now, I want to talk about the daytime, because and what spurred this whole thing was essentially, and we know the corporate side is big in the daytime. We already touched on that. Someone's saying as this education gets remolded and sports continues to fold more into that, the ability of, because you have all the tech per se for an athlete to train during the day, is building some of these almost micro schools in sportainment type, facilities like a 5-iron where you could bring in 10 golfers. They have their education, their training, whatever else. Is that feasible, or how else do you think about the daytime and making sure that stays filled? And as times change, how you continue to evolve with that?
I think it starts with coming up with what your identity is and what your actual point of view on the customer is. So I wouldn't say go build a simulator company. I would say what is the feeling and experience you want your customers to have, right? So which for us at least means we want to be the best place for the serious golfer and the best place for the entertainment person. Obviously the daytime is mostly that serious golfer. So like what does that mean? And can you build enough of a value proposition for the serious golfer? So off the top of my head, some things that I think resonate with the daytime customer, really good golf clubs, right? The people that are coming are avid golfers. They're spending an hour out of their day, their lunch hour, whatever it is, before work, they're using it like a gym. So the sims better be accurate. You better have nice clubs, bag storage better be good. Their clubs better be clean, and not dusty when they come. They're by the bay. And then, so there's sort of the obvious, really good golf pros that are giving lessons, really good club fitters and things like that. So there's sort of that obvious stuff. But I think one of the most interesting stories for me is we found that our members, by the way, our members, if you don't know and you're listening, free time from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. during the week, and then, free walk-in privileges if there are no bays booked. So you get a lot of sort of free hitting time as part of a monthly membership, and it's one of our best things that we've ever done. And that's in a world where we're probably more known for being the top golf entertainment type company. But what we found was our members were bringing in their own coffee and they were bringing in their own food. And I think some of the reaction from the team was we have to stop that. Like, we need signs and everything. My reaction was, what are we doing wrong if they don't like our coffee and they don't like our food? And the truth was that our menu was designed for corporate events at night. It was designed with fries and flatbreads and things like that for the lunch crowd. And then for the breakfast, we had no offering for them. How can I say don't bring in your bagel if we don't have any food or juice bar or something like that? Where we've sort of pivoted with that daytime menu is we're launching performance breakfast bars, which are chia protein puddings and cocoa nibs and all these healthy sort of toppings on top with Greek yogurt and all this kind of stuff, all for 100% free for the members in the morning. And then for lunch, we're launching a performance menu, which is more of your grain bowls and your salmon bowls. And so sort of these smaller but healthier menus that we think is what the actual members want. So, just a lesson. And by the way, coffee is 100% free. We have these Eversys machines that are $20,000 a pop, where you can make almond milk latte this and espressos and things like that. So it's really sort of listening to what the customer was really saying, which was, you're not doing a good enough job in this one area of hospitality, and trying to improve it, right? And the next step from there is like, can we build juice bars? Can we actually have a chef in the morning making avocado toast and things like that? So whether we get there or other people get there, my point is, it's a very intentional way of thinking about the problem and trying to solve for it. Because the truth is, the people that are there during the day, what we found, were practicing. They were your sort of picking this over the gym type person, and they want to eat healthier food.
Yeah. And how much do you think about qualitative versus quantitative when you're using data to, I don't want to call them pivots. You're just, upgrading, making changes, right? Like, that seemed very much like you were just listening to customers and you were just paying attention versus like you're actually looking at the data.
I'll give Elric a shout out. I never thought I would say that we would have a business or data intelligence team at 5-Iron. Ever. I was a philosophy major. I did trade on Wall Street, and we certainly use SQL and database things and had built our own apps and things like that over time. We have a real data intelligence team here that is super, super powerful. So we're always trying to get data, whether it's through surveys or just our own, what are the, we know exactly what members are spending their money on in food. And we know that, for example, members spend a tenth as much as another customer at 5-Iron, right? So you have this sort of actual real data showing that the members are not enjoying our food and beverage sort of offering. And that maybe that's an exaggeration, but we'd always like to take the negative approach, right? There are a million other reasons you can explain that's not true, but I will take the negative approach, and we could do better. And then also you just have, look, we have 30 locations. We started this thing from scratch. I go in there all the time and work shifts and want to spend time with the location. You talk to customers and you see bagel wrappers and people bring their own Starbucks, and it's pretty obvious, some of this stuff, if you just go pay attention and talk to customers.
Now, so you're 30 locations now, when you look back to the first one, do you go like, I had no clue what I was doing or what we were doing? Or like, what's sort of the progression now, like how much that learning curve is from 1 to 30? Just, I'm always, because I look back at stuff I did, I'm like, I had no idea. I can't believe I even got to this point.
We had no idea about so many things. We didn't know how to run payroll because we also didn't have any people to pay. We didn't know how to really build a website. We didn't know how to market. We didn't have, any of these departments that we have now. But I will say what we had, and probably what you had at the beginning, was we were obsessed with the hospitality. I joke that we have our build outs now cost 7 times what we spent at the beginning. I didn't paint the last 5-Iron that we built, whereas we painted the first one, right? I'd have to work in the kitchen of this one and whatnot. The best version of our menu is so much better. Our food is so much better. Our beverage, I had to look up menus on my phone to make things for customers at the beginning, right? But what we did have back then is this obsession with hospitality. And the truth is, back then, when it was me working shifts with the other founders, We actually had a higher, this one metric that we use, which is beverage to sim rental ratio. Basically, getting people drinking and eating at the place. So the food was worse, the beverages were worse, but they were eating and drinking more because of that hospitality. And the truth is, every single problem that you can run into, whether it's, I mean, the electric would go out, the air conditioning will go out, we'd have fans. If you just apologize to customers, talk to them, explain what's going on, and make them feel like they're part of the team and making that experience better, you'll be okay. So what we did really, really well back then, that hospitality has been the hardest thing to scale as we grow, and I think we've done as good a job as any with that. But that's something that I sort of think about, as we grow.
Yeah. What are some things you do to try to increase that, or training, or how do you keep that, we'll call it, community feel, or continue to try to build it?
Yeah, it's a great question. We have small things like, we're on the Google Suite. So we're on GChat all the time with our GMs and our directors of golf and all these sort of different positions. We have event producers. So you sort of, honestly, at the beginning probably the main thing is at the beginning where you could have just me who could sell you a lesson, a league team, and, get you to buy, a pitcher instead of a single beer, right? Like you have these sort of multi-purpose athletes, I would say, at the beginning who can really understand how to give a tour and do all this stuff. As you scale, at least for us, with being kind of a complicated company, right? We have leagues, we have lessons, we have corporate events, we have bachelor parties, we have kids parties, we have kids clinics. Like there's so much stuff going on. What we've really done is try to narrow the scope of everyone's job position so they know what success looks like. And for a while there, it was really hard for the team, corporate down to the location level, to understand what success looked like in their position. So, for example, now the person selling memberships is focused on selling memberships, getting more memberships than they sold last year. But the person who's focused on retention, which is really the experience, is just focused on retention. So back in the day, that person would have been the same person, and it'd be like, well, Jared, you said you wanted me to talk to customers, but you also said you wanted me to respond to an email within 10 minutes. And it's like, you're kind of right. You know what I mean? So that's where just having more positions and more defined positions, at least for us, is what sort of one of our approaches has been.
Yeah. And you leverage AI at all to do the 10-minute type stuff? Or, I mean, it seems like a pretty quick turnaround. That's why when I look back when we were emailing, you were like, oh, I love how responsive you are. It's because I did it within 10 minutes. So I'm like, now it all makes sense, which is pretty funny.
I wouldn't have come on your podcast. No, I just think it's really important in that first sign. I also think that if your inbox is packed, you don't, you're disorganized and you're missing things. And I just think we think as a company that it's really important to be responsive and whatnot. Yeah, we use AI for a ton of things from, just one example. It used to be you spend all of this time doing month-end sort of FP&A analysis, and now you just use these third-party tools that do all these charts and graphs and everything like that. Integrating your payroll so that it goes directly into your sort of business intelligence accounting systems. If you're not doing it, it's almost impossible. And even when we hire, even if we hire, say, for like an HR position or marketing position, it's one of the first questions. It's like, what is your experience using it? And how interested are you in using it? Because no part of me believes that the best CMO of Five Iron has no idea how to use AI and sort of like tech in general. So you're always trying to sort of push the boundaries and see where you can leverage that stuff.
Now, do you feel you've built the business to a point when you just talk about scaling things and the whole thing is like to build yourself out of it? Do you feel like if you just went away for a year, the business would be still in a better spot from a year? Or like, how do you view like removing yourself from a lot of functions? Because you went from doing everything to now, I'm sure, less and less.
Yeah, it's crazy. One of my favorite stories is that our first private equity firm, the partner who invested, who's one of my good friends now, he said, Jared, you're an entrepreneur, you're not a CEO. And I was like, fuck you, John. Like, I'm calling him out. But it was saying that in sort of a loving way, as like, who doesn't want to be an entrepreneur? But at the end of the day, I was like, wait a second. Like, I've succeeded at this sport and this business thing. Like, I'm gonna become the best CEO. And I do think that it's been a transition from solving problems by literally going to talk to that customer to building systems and processes in place. We have 1,000 employees, 30 locations. We have 3 presidents underneath me. So I think that has been something that's been exciting. Not to say that I'm the best at or perfect at it, but I would say that I've been lucky enough to have a ton of resources from the private equity firms to a ton of CEOs in golf and outside of golf that have been helpful in terms of answering questions and being partners in that journey.
Yeah. Now, Jared, do you talk to customers? Do you 1,000 employees? Like, how do you keep that engaged, or how many, how do you, because now that becomes like really your main, personal, I mean, this sounds wrong, but like that almost becomes your main customer now. So you got to take care of them to keep the other.
No, 100%. And it's about one thing that I've learned. It's about hiring that executive team underneath you or to be with you as part of that team. And we're lucky enough that we have some absolute rock stars that can do that and scale that culture. And I think that when we finally sort of paid up, you start as super scrappy. The idea of paying someone $200,000 a year is just like unfathomable to be in a management position, let alone more than that. And I think that you realize that those people, if they're good, they pay for themselves and can help you scale that culture. And you need allies, right? Like there have been times in the company where I didn't have allies on my side of things like, hey, let's try to stay open later. And then you get pushback from enough people that all of a sudden it's, all right, maybe Jared, you are crazy, right? But you hire enough of the right executives and they're good and they're on your side and they're pushing the company forward. You want that as opposed to the people that are finding every reason why not to do things. Because look, the easiest thing in this world is to find reasons not to do things. If it's like back in the day, if I said I went to a performance lunch, you know, the chefs don't know how to do this and they're not trained on it. If they come in for more, like you'd find 1,000 reasons why not to do it, right? Ordering's more difficult, the menus, the marketing. And at a certain point, you're like, all right, I guess I'm not going to do the performance. But if you have enough of the right people at the top on that can rally the troops and get people excited about it, it makes all the difference in getting any of those initiatives across the line.
Yeah. Then when you started it, was it just to do one successful location, or like when did you start to be like, oh shoot, this is like there's something here, this is pretty cool, and then you just wake up like one day like today and it's just like holy cow, we have 30. I guess how do you sort of manage that or think about that?
So I'll never forget the first location was Flatiron. So the 5 Star Fifth Avenue Irons for the Flatiron District. We had 4 simulators. And our first big decision was to expand to the floor below us to actually put in 5 more simulators, which at the time was revolutionary to have 9 simulators in one single building anywhere. And 4 was honestly revolutionary when we did it with the food and the beverage and everything, but 9 was crazy. And I remember, and this is when we weren't the 4 founders, we're not paying ourselves anything. And all the money's going back into the business and upgrading things and figuring things out. And I was like, guys, like we have a pretty good, annuity effectively on our hands. Like this is a good business that can make us, I don't know, $100,000 each a year. That is wildly successful in a world of we had no idea what we're doing and people love it and they're loyal. But we could also expand to the second floor and unanimously everyone, because everyone's crazy at that point, is like, yes, let's do it, right? And at that point, it was sort of not just about let's do that floor, but it was like, all right, let's go look for real estate down in Wall Street because we kind of think that'd be a good second location. And then all of a sudden, one thing leads to the other, and then it kind of takes off like a rocket ship. I do sometimes wish we expanded a little bit more gradually sometimes because of all the lessons that you learn. But yeah, it does kind of start like that. But again, you need alignment among everyone. If one person said, "I don't want to expand this thing," you're not growing it.
And as we think, I don't know who gave me these 5 things. I want to say it was maybe Ollie from F1 Arcade, and he's done a bunch of different stuff. But he said the 5 things: sportainment, location, team, inclusion, corporate, and then technology. How do you think through the mixing of all the different variables? And I can go a little bit deeper into any of those if you need some clarification. But he was basically like, those are the 5 main things.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with technology, if for no other reason, is the last thing you said. I think one of the mistakes that at least simulator quote unquote companies make is they're simulator companies, right? I'm a TrackMan company, I'm a Full Swing company, I'm a Foresight company. It's just never going to work. Maybe it would have worked 10 years ago. Just like if I know you're going to fail as a simulator company, if I go on your website and the whole front page is about TrackMan and the courses that you can play, right?
Hmm.
That is the commodity that everyone else has. So when we think about technology, we think about building our own technology, which is proprietary to 5 Iron. That's, everything from the golf experience, right? So what games can we layer on top of TrackMan, to the food and beverage ordering experience, to our rewards program, to our app that's coming out this month. So technology is way more than just that core piece of software that you plug in. It's really how are you leveraging it for everything that you're doing. Club fitting, right? How do you incorporate tech into the club fitting experience, the lesson experience? So it's sort of, and you have a selection of customers that probably like technology if they're hitting on a simulator, right? So you better incorporate other technology into the experience there as well, and it not just be part of like the gaming experience, I guess I would call it. We talked about the team a little bit. Obviously, that's critical, and you just can't scale and go. I'm going to Denmark later today to meet with the TrackMan folks. That's a 3-day trip where I'm away from sort of the core business. We didn't have a great, president of commercial. This guy Danny here is awesome. there's no way it would work in the past. But now I can go there comfortably, and I know that he's got things running under control. So certainly another important piece as well. I forget the other three that you mentioned, but happy to touch on them as well.
Yeah. No, we touched on corporate already. We've touched on location a little bit, just as like, what areas make sense. I think Ollie said big cities with high income, younger areas. At least that was for F1 Arcade.
Yeah, I think that it's, we invented the concept, right? So we're learning by the day where it can work. I mean, we're doing really well in Erie, Pennsylvania, right? But we're also doing, and we're doing well in Atlanta, we're doing well in New York. So we kind of look at it as a factor test of the weather, the income, the interest in golf, the competition out there. Just because we think we're better doesn't mean we want to be around 10 other indoor golf facilities either. So it's a bit of a factor test. And it's also not just about the city. It's also about, is there parking? Are you on the right block? Do you want street exposure? Do you not want street exposure? For us, we've kind of done a good job of not worrying so much about the sort of, the windows and being able to look in and sort of the bar traffic. We're more of the speakeasy kind of, if you know, type location. But that's sort of an intentional way of approaching real estate, right? For F1 Arcade, I think that they're much more, we want to be prominent with walk-in traffic and people coming, but they also probably don't have people coming at 6 a.m. to, practice on the simulators. Maybe they do, and I apologize if they do. But
Yeah, I don't know.
it's it's a little bit different there. But yeah, no, real estate I think is critical, and I would say some of our biggest mistakes in growing the company have been making the wrong real estate decisions.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, how do you think about just this off-course golf, right? Obviously, you guys have been an accelerant in that, along with some others. How do you think of that space and where it's going?
So I was with my daughter in Dubai, who's 5. Her name is Penelope, and she really hasn't spent a lot of time at 5 iron, as crazy as it sounds. One, she's only 5 now, and she's just getting into golf. All she wanted to do was spend time at 5 iron, right? She got milkshakes. She would dance to the music. The games on the TrackMan are amazing that TrackMan is built, and we've worked with them on. And it was just such an eye opener again, and a reminder of how much fun golf can be. And I think that's awesome. And one of the things that I talk about all the time at these golf conferences, and you go there and the question is like, oh, can golf grow? Is it ending? First of all, everyone is like 65 in a blue blazer at these golf conferences, and they're all wondering where the sport can go, which is always very funny to me as someone who didn't grow up playing golf. But I think the truth is, and I see this all the time at 5 iron, which people just watch, is hitting that first ball and seeing it go and knock over some goblin or go to the green, whatever your version of success is for that first couple of shots. It is actually a really fun sport. It's a really addicting sport. And the more that off course can do to introduce people to that shot euphoria, as Topgolf would call it, I think the better and the more it can grow. And what the word golf means to the future generation, I don't think matters. Like, I don't even like using the word off course or green grass or any of those. I just think, there's going to be more balls hit, quote unquote, off course. And it might already have changed. I'm sure it has by now. But certainly for someone like my daughter who's 5, by the time she's 25, 35, like, who knows what the golf girl will look like? You have TGL, technology is only getting better. Green grass, which I love, is going to certainly have a place, but it might stay the same. So I think it's an exciting way to get into the sport, but also I think we'll just sort of become a sport in and of itself.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now we're at 5 iron. What's the next 5 years look like? Is it?
Yeah, I try to stick to the next day, which is how to make our customers happy, and it's all I can do. I'm sure smarter CEOs come on here and talk to you about their 5-year plans. I personally am just not. So for me, it's how
Just
to
get to Denmark safely.
yeah, right. Get to Denmark safely. Try to have TrackMan be in a good mood when we're there. It's like, what are we doing this week? We're trying to launch, these performance food menus. It's top of mind. We're trying to improve our member retention, which means making sure that the customers are happy. Event season is coming up. How do we get events to extend? How do we make sure that they're happy with the food? Make sure the food and ordering is right. So I don't know. We think a lot about that stuff, and for whatever reason, it seemed to work in terms of the long-term growth strategy here.
Yeah, it's yeah. What for people that want to go play, see what locations you have, what's websites, or where's sort of the best place to get info to head to a 5 iron or just learn on any front?
Yeah, if you want to try it for free, just email me or DM me. My email is Jared, Jared, at 5irongolf.com, all spelled out. You can follow us at 5irongolf on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn, everywhere on the planet. Go to 5irongolf.com. My Instagram is Jared B. Solomon. If you want to shoot me a DM there for some free fitting or a lesson or whatever, here, you name it, I'm happy to take care of you.
Love it. Awesome. Well, good stuff, Jared. Appreciate you hopping on. And you might regret doing that, but we'll see. I don't know. I don't always know how the audience reacts. I've had some crazy things happen for people who are like, "Hey, I can't keep up with the email," so I'm like, "Sorry."
I said I'd respond within 10 minutes, so I better be responsive.
Be careful. Yeah.